There are moments when we forget who we are. Moments when the world is loud and truth feels distant. But God has never been silent about you. From beginning to end, His word speaks identity. Not just who you are, but whose you are. This is what He calls you. You are chosen, redeemed, loved, a child of God, a son, a daughter, set apart, a masterpiece. You are forgiven, clean, free. You are His beloved, a holy nation. You are His dwelling place, the light of the world, a city on a hill, an ambassador of hope, a citizen of heaven, an overcomer, appointed, equipped, held, sealed, strengthened. You are not forgotten, not abandoned, not alone. You are blessed, protected, provided for, safe in His hands. You are a new creation, adopted, marked by mercy, made for glory. You are His, now and forever. And nothing can separate you from His love.
Well, again, good morning. It's always great to be with you, and looking forward to sharing this time together as we always do. You know, every single one of us, without exception, at some point in life has always aspired to be something. All of us have. You know, as little kids, it was everything from butterflies to, you know, cowboys or superheroes or whatever it was. You know, I remember, you know, as a little kid, always aspiring to be something. As we get a little older, we kind of take a little shift in that, but at the same time, we explore various career choices and dreams. You know, what is it that we want to be? How many little kids, and maybe even ourselves when we were growing up, what do you want to be when you grow up? We always had an answer for that. And everybody always had these aspirations, this idea of career choices or opportunities. Very normal. Nothing unusual about that, nothing strange about that. Normal, common, pretty much across the board how life works. You know, that's a normal thing. We're exploring those roads, you know, ourselves with the girls as they're getting ready to try to venture out in life very shortly. And oh my goodness, you know, all these different opportunities that are there, and some that weren't even around when some of us were coming along, you know, and all the different things that are there. But always looking to accomplish something, always looking to be something beyond us. It's very easy to get caught in the hype of that. It's very easy to get caught up in the words sometimes as the days go by, because we get caught under labels. You know, we have a lot of labels in the world. You're this, you're that, all this other stuff like that. Labels. Some are good. Some are not good. Some are kind. Some are harsh. I want us to look at this verse today, and I want us to consider something, if you will, because it is most familiar. We've all heard this verse, you are the salt of the earth. And, you know, if you lose that salt, we've all heard that. But I want us to look at this verse carefully. I want us to look at what it's saying here. And I find something interesting when I begin to study and to read this, because oftentimes what we find is Jesus was speaking directly. He rarely ever gave a general, broad statement. It was always directly. And so we see as this verse begins, it starts with the word you. So that's direct. That's very clear and to the point. That is to the heart of the believer, to the heart of the follower, the one who trusts by faith and in faith. The one who is there. He says, you are. Now think about this for a minute. You are. What we find here is the identity is recognized before the task is given. That's powerful. Because I'm already assuming something here. I'm already am. Because what we don't find is he's not giving instruction to go be salt. He's not giving instructions to go become salt. No, he says, you are salt. What does that change? I want us to think about that for a minute. What does that change? I already am. What does that mean? That means I'm capable. I have the ability. I don't have to wait. I don't have to train. I don't have to study. I don't have to earn this position or accomplish this goal. I already have it. Oh, it kind of gives you that, wait a minute. I already have it, so hold on a minute. If I already am and things are not happening, oh boy. If I already am and things are happening, I guess I need to take a closer look at me. And this is a message for all of us, friends. As we think about the world around us, we think about the church, we think about our communities, our neighborhoods, our families, all these different things. What is the one thing that we constantly are saying that we want to see change? We want to see something different. We want to see it get better. We want to see this. We want to see that. We want to see, and change is at the heart of this. I want us to look at what is being said here, because if we believe, and now everyone here in this room this morning, I believe, would state this. If we believe in the person and in the example of Christ, we have to see something important in these very first couple of words of this passage here in verse 1, in verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. In other words, the very place that you live, the very place that you exist, the very place that you believe needs changing. And we all say it all the time, whether it's the political construct, whether it's the faith world, whatever. We're always looking for change, behavior, and all these other things. He says here, you are the salt of the earth, the very place that you live, the very place that you believe needs change, the place that you desire to see change, but yet we wait to see that change happening. How many times do we wait? You know, every 4 years, we're going to get it changed if we get a new guy. Oh, it's the same old thing over and over and over. We're going to wait and it'll be better next year. Jesus here says, you are the change. You are the salt of the earth. So what we find here is we wait to see the change happening, but Jesus is saying, you're waiting on you. Wow. What a revelation from a simple little verse that we really don't look at when we look and really, really focus on the word are. You are. Not might be, not should be, not could be, but you already are. That's a dynamic changer here, because the needed component to make the very change that we desire is something you've already got, something I've already got. We're in this together. We look at this and we oftentimes, we sell ourselves short. We do. Because I think, again, we go back to labels and we get told things through life, and maybe we hear things through life and we sell ourselves short. And sometimes we even come to believe things like, oh, I could never do that. Or I could never be that. That's the one that gets me right there. I could never be. Why? Who said that? Who told you that? I could never be. I'm not good enough. I could never. And the list just goes on and on and on of negativity, and it gets longer every year that we get around. But what we find here in the words of Christ himself, it points to something special. He says, you are. You are. This is not just some motivational speech or some kind of, Tony Robbins seminar, because I don't think all of you paid $1,400 to get in here. If you did, Teresa, this is going to be a great offering week. No, I'm just kidding. But we look here. He says, you are. So what he sees is what's really there. What's really there. And he's trying to get everyone, and he's trying to point to everyone, at least those that will listen, those that will trust, those that will follow. He's trying to let them see what he sees. We talk about looking at things through the eyes of Christ. Look at yourself that way. Look at yourself through the eyes of Christ, because he says you are the salt of the earth. Man, I love that. That is just so powerful, but yet still so simplistic, because we have to look at the example that was set before us. He didn't look at the fishermen and see fishermen, friends. No, he looked at ones that could change the world. That's who he saw. He didn't see a tax collector. No, he saw Matthew, and he called him by name. He didn't see one that was beyond hope. No, he saw one that was worth restoring. He didn't see the deaf and the blind and the mute and the lame and all that. No, what he saw were those that were overlooked by others. When we begin to understand the person and the character of Christ and what he was teaching, it begins to change the whole entire dynamic of what we believe. Because in other words, what we find is Jesus gives value before he gives assignment. I always believed, working in teamwork, to never ask anything of anyone that I wasn't willing to do myself, ever. I always thought that was important. But what we find here is not only the same kind of idea, because Jesus obviously set the example. He did it all. We sang the song, he paid it all. But he did it all. That actually is even deeper. But what we find here is he's not asking us to do something we can't do. He says, you are. You're already there. I made you that way. The day you came to know me, everything changed. And so he says, you are, therefore you can. We sell ourselves short. We're the ones that come up with, I can't do this, or I'd never do that. Knowing that you are, well, that changes the game. That changes everything, because here what we find is we grasp these very first words, you are. Not going to try to be, not going to learn to be, but you are. I can't focus on that enough because it's so important. And we hear this verse, and we've heard it over the course of time. Maybe you've been in a position to even teach it. And I have. I've taught it before. Never saw this before, ever. But what I find here is important, because a lot of times this verse is used to point one toward the consideration, if you will, of losing your witness. You're not salty enough. Some people will say you're too salty, but we have all this. But that's not what he's focusing on here. That's not where this is going. What we learn through this verse is how that's even possible. Because you already have something. How could you possibly no longer have it? How could it possibly no longer be any good? Quit using it. Quit using it. They say if you don't use it, you'll lose it. That's an old saying, all right? I remember my uncle, God bless him, a wonderful man, all right? So 1976, I was around, so I'm dating myself up, but he bought a brand new Pontiac Bonneville, which at the time was right out of the showcase, right out of the front of the dealership, candy apple red, had the half white vinyl moon roof. It was a showpiece. It was beautiful, And I remember seeing that car, and he come driving it in, and the time that it was driven was from the dealership to his house in the protected garage and closed up. It never went anywhere else, 30 years later, he decided, well, I'm probably get out and take it for a ride. The gas lines were rotten. The tires were rotten. The engine wouldn't even turn over. And it had never been driven more than probably 200 miles. How do we get there? How does anything get lost in some type of way? You see, salt doesn't just exist. Salt has a purpose. Salt has a reason. It has value, and that value is found in what it is able to do, not become, because it already is salt. So it doesn't have to become salt. This is not an evolutionary thing. It already is. It's not becoming. So therefore, the value is found in what it can do, not what it can become, because it's already salt. Jesus says, you are salt of the earth. Think about this for a minute, friends. If we consider you are versus try to be or learn to be, what we find is we have a purpose. We have a purpose, and it is not found on just sitting in the shelf. It is not found in just sitting over in the corner waiting, just like literal salt. If it only sits in the box, if it only sits in the container, it never accomplishes what it was meant to do. Never. Right? If you never pick it up and season your food with it, or preserve something with it, or make something, what does it do? Nothing. It just sits there. It just sits there. You know, and depending on where your climate is, where the humidity is, it can clump up, it can get hard, and eventually becomes no good. It's worthless. It's nothing, and it's tossed out. Think about this passage. You are. We are. Therefore, the assignment is not merely to fill a space, but rather improve the space. I want this to change. Okay, what are we going to do about it? We need to get this done. When do we start? That's kind of got to be the way that we view things, because oftentimes we get dormant and we have this wish list and it keeps getting longer and longer and longer. I mean, you know, and if it was the genie in the lamp, well, that rascal be wore out coming back and forth in and out of the lamp, right? Because we wish this and we wish and we wish and we wish. Jesus says, you are. Therefore, you do. That's important, because we look at all these different things that we want to happen. Therefore, there's an assignment there. And that's all he's saying is, okay, when do we get started? You know, here's a pen and a paper. When do we write? Here's the whatever. When do we get busy? The assignment, again, it is not merely to fill a space like salt sitting in the corner in a box. It is to improve the space. So, knowing that you are, as I said earlier, is a game changer. So where is the lesson here? Where are we going? Where is the understanding? We find it in the most familiar word that we use all the time. It's in every conversation almost. And we find it as Jesus continues. He says, you are the salt of the earth. What's the next word? But. That changes everything. Okay, so you have the assignment. You have the identity. You know exactly who you are. But if the salt, which he says is who? You. He says, if the salt, so again, not trying to be, not going to be, but already are. He says, if the salt should lose, and if by chance that happens, remember where the salt is and who has the ability to use it, not be it, already is it. All right, so he says, if that salt should lose its taste, should lose, no longer has it, no longer in possession of it, its flavor, its taste. How does that happen? What is the method? What is the answer? He says, how can it be made salty? So if the salt no longer does what salt does, how does it remain valuable? How does it remain useful? How does it remain helpful? Because if it is no longer giving what it is made to give, then what else does it do? What else is it needed for? Think about how that applies to life. You are the salt of the earth. You are what brings its flavor. You are what brings its seasoning, its preservation, all these different stuff. But you don't do it. That's what he's saying. And if you don't do it, how do you expect anything to ever get better? We rely on everything else and everybody else and every other trick and gimmick and this and that. But we say that it lies in the heart of the believer. You want it done. What are you going to do? You know, I want this, I want that. Okay. He's not saying that, we're not even discussing rights and wrongs here. It's like, why are you sitting there talking about it? You got the ability to do it. You had the keys to the car. Why are we sitting here not riding? I mean, it's very, very simplistic when we begin to see. So what does it do? What is it needed for? We read, it is no longer, meaning it had value because it was. No longer, what does it say? Good for anything. In other words, it doesn't have a secondary purpose. There is no plan B. There is no secondary purpose. In other words, it was never meant to just sit there. It was made to use. You know, I remember my father, my dad, you had to know him, God knows. Oh. But he had a saying for everything. And I remember when he would buy a new truck. And he was a hard worker, and all of a sudden, he'd had it a couple of weeks, and it already had some dings and bings and everything in it, because he was a hard worker, that's what he did. And people would say, oh, how could you use that new truck for that? He said, what did I buy it for? Got it to use. I mean, that was it. He said, I didn't get it to a beauty contest, I got it to work. The Lord here says, what is salt supposed to do? It's not supposed to just sit there. He's going to use it for something. It's not just to be dormant. He's saying you are the salt of the earth. That's the assignment that we have. And he says if it's not used, then it ultimately becomes good for nothing. He's not talking about secondary purpose. Well, I didn't get that part done, but I'm going to do this. He said, no, there's one assignment. One. I love the simplicity of these teachings because we get all confused and all out of sorts about all these different things and this and that. No, actually, it's really simple. It's one. He said, you are the salt of the earth. That's it. That's where you live. That's who you are. What are you going to do with it? We're like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. Neither have I until I started looking at this in such a different way, because he says here, it is no longer good for anything. It doesn't have a secondary purpose. It was never meant to just sit there. He says it needs to be thrown out. It needs to be trampled under people's feet. What does he say here? Because this is not pointing to losing the ability. It's not about the ability. This is pointing and tells us it was meant to be a benefit from the very beginning. It was meant to be a benefit from its origin, and it no longer is seen as such. And when one is no longer, or something is no longer seen as a value or a need for it, what happens to it? It gets thrown away. It gets thrown away. One of the things that I think people struggle with so much in this life is value. I'm no good. Nobody cares. We wrestle with that. We hear it all the time. Life's not worth living. My girls but they're going to attend a funeral tomorrow of a peer, 16 years old, that took their life. It's unimaginable, the lies that we get told in the world. You're this and you're that and you're no good. But that's what the Lord is saying. Don't listen to that. You have value. You have great value. Not the Walmart brand. You have great value. You'll get that. But you have great value in something that can change somebody's life. Do we see how this ties to the very first word, to you? Specific identity, are capable, ready, equipped. And then we see, but if you don't use it, and if it just sits, if that's all it does, if it becomes dormant, if it's a shelf item, oh, well, you ever had one of those things in the cabinet so dang long, and one day you decide you need it, and so, I might have one of those, and you go to looking for it, and it's somewhere way in the back of the, cabinet, because it's been sitting there forever. He's saying, what do we accomplish when we do that with what we have, with the gifts that we've been given? Just sit there and become dormant, because after a while, it is no longer seen with favor, flavor, or usefulness. And so oftentimes it's gotten rid of. Now I ask a hard question here. If we look at the world as a whole, how many people have adopted this attitude? It's no good. I don't need it. It has no flavor. It has no usefulness to me. How many people in the world today have adopted this attitude about the church? Let's just be real. I don't need it. It's not important. It's not a priority. And again, it's not about bashing people who don't attend every week. But when it's not on your list, we're not even talking about a priority. We're not, but it ain't on the list at all. Why? Because it has no value to me. It has no flavor. It's whatever. I don't need all that stuff like that. It's bland. It's no longer good for anything. I just throw that out. I don't need that part of my life. A lot of people get there. That sounds harsh. That sounds really harsh. But why would I make that statement? Why would I say that? What's my point? We can't move past the first words of this message. You are the salt of the earth. Me and you, all of us, everybody under the confines of the umbrella of following Christ. We can't move past that. And then we see that word but. The follower, the believer, the one who trusts Jesus with everything, he's saying, you are the salt of the earth. You see, identity and purpose all in one statement. We're all looking for, who am I? Some people think, I don't know what I am or who I am. There it is right there. You are the salt of the earth. That's the answer. What are you doing with that? Are you seasoning something? Are you making something better? Are you preserving something? Everything is there in one statement. Not go try, not go take a class, but you are. I want us to think for just a moment of how that looks. And we're talking a lot about one subject here, one verse. You're thinking, how much could we possibly bleed out of these, 40 words here? A lot. Because I want us to think about this for a minute. Consider, if you will, and imagine what the world looks like today if we remove the salt. And I mean in the most literal way. How does that impact life? Food spoils. It's gone. There's no preservation. There is no nothing. TV dinner's gone. There is none because I ain't nothing but salt, right? But all the preservation is gone. There's no flavor. Health becomes an issue. Healing becomes an issue. Nothing's preserved ever again. Ocean life completely gone. Why? Because salt changes everything it touches in one way or another. It changes everything it touches. Now, turn that illustration, turn that mindset, that idea, if you will, turn it internally. Look in the mirror. This is a mirror moment. Can I say the same thing about me? Does everything I touch change? Now that can be for the good or the bad. It just, we all have those days. If I touched it today, it turned, and we've all had those moments, okay? So I'm not talking about that. He's saying you are the salt of the earth. I am the salt of the earth. That's the thing that we should say. Me, personally. Do I truly grasp how important that is? I don't think we do. That's not to be critical or judgmental or mean. That's just true. I don't think that we do because we get so caught up in life. Life is busy and we got this to do and that to do and here to go and all these, and we get caught up in all of that. And then we begin to lose our flavor. We begin to lose our usefulness because we kind of tend to believe we don't have any, or we couldn't change it if we tried, or all this other stuff, and we fall into that. Do I truly grasp the importance of this statement that I am the salt of the earth? And it's not arrogance. The question I have to ask is, if I disappear, if I go away, would it matter? And I'm not talking about that I'll miss so-and-so. I'm not talking about that. Emotions are a whole different story here. I'm not talking about titles. I'm not talking about talents or positions or humor. But who did I encourage? Who did I help? Who did I love? Who did I teach? Who did I give a better example to? Who did I show Christ? Because that is salt. That is what we are called to be. That is salt. Not my influence and not my title and not my position or not my rank or none of that matters. He says, you are the salt of the earth, the bare bones, the basics, the necessities. Because if our salt is on the shelf and it's losing flavor by the day, or it's constantly being shaken out, there's a difference in how that looks. This is not about preaching. This is not about teaching or reading the Bible or promoting an event or bringing someone to service. This is about, do you know that you are? That's a question we all have to answer. Do I know that I am the salt of the earth? And that's a huge thing, because sometimes we just think, well, I'm just that. You know, I'm just a mom. I'm just I'm just a dad, or I'm just a this or that. No, it doesn't stop there at all. There's so much more. And the influence that comes on all the things. See, the church is those who understand this. That's the church. The church is those who understand that they are the salt of the earth, not the structure, not the institution or the organization. Because if again, another harsh statement here, and again, I don't mean to be cruel, but if we look at the word as a broad spectrum word, church, today, how many people instantly hear that word and think of just an organization, or an institution, or a fancy building, or money, or greed, or corruption, all the horrible things that you see on the news? And I think sometimes because of those negativity things, we forget, or at least are in the process of forgetting about being the container. You see the cardboard box with the little girl and the umbrella, or the cute glass object with the 5 holes on the top, or the cheap plastic one from the Dollar Tree, or the paper packet that you tear the top off of. All of those, friends, they are not the salt. They merely hold it. That's all they do. They are the container. They hold it. They hold it. And the salt is on the inside. But if it remains on the inside, it changes nothing. Think about that. If it remains on the inside, I see all the time, being in the position that I'm in and knowing the people that I know, I see the competitions. And some people don't like that. Some people don't want to hear that, but it's the truth, and we're there. There's 565 other places right now in this county meeting right now. 565, all competing for you. You know, some are full, some are not. Some are trying to get started. Some have 10 people. Some have 1,000. It's all over the place. The competition is there. Some are trying to be more notable than others. And again, I don't say this to be critical, but I personally know some. I personally know some that are striving to be on list so they can get greater recognition. I'm this and I'm that and I'm fastest growing, all this other stuff. But let me ask you something. Is that salt? Is that salt? Lights and bells and whistles and smoke, that's all cosmetics. And I'm not decrying the right or the wrong of any of that. But does it create flavor? Or does it just look good? Because there's a difference. There's a difference. And when we begin to understand what he's placing on the individual, you see, Jesus made things better. Not just by being Jesus, but by what he did. He gave people hope. He restored things, and he helped others find peace within. And he challenged things when wrong was stepping forward. And he healed, and he forgave, and he lifted up, and he made life better. That's salt. That's what it all means. That's what it really, really points us to. Salt is not about, look at me. Salt is about making something better. That it really is. See, because I'm cooking, I'm shaking and this, am I making it better? No, it's what I'm using, because I don't want the attention on me. That's an easy place to blame. This was terrible. You cooked it. Well, that's an easy place to blame, right? You used the wrong salt. No, but it can be said of our example. It's not about trying to get attention, but rather, may we be the reason that someone can taste and believe that there is hope. You see, that's the thing, friends. We live in this hopeless world that people are just giving up right and left, young and old alike. I hear it constantly. I have no reason to live. What does that mean? Think about the depth of that statement. No reason to live. But we're surrounded by endless opportunities. And while not all of them come our way, not all of them are great, but we think about the gift that we have, and we think about how do we get there? How do we answer this? How do we do this? He says, you. That's where it stops. You are the salt of the earth. You see, friends, it's an assignment. It's an assignment. It is not a command to find it, but rather to use it. And that's a difference. Go look for this. That's one thing. That's a treasure hunt. And that's a whatever. A scavenger hunt. All these are. Go find this. That's not what he said. He didn't say go find salt. He didn't say go find reason or purpose. He said you are. That changes everything. That changes the assignment, because now he's saying I have the ability. We started off when we began this message talking about aspiration to be and fill in the blank. Everybody has had those dreams from the time we were little kids, old enough to understand anything. You see your first, thing on TV. I want to be that. And it could be a cartoon figure. It could be, a quarterback. It doesn't matter. Everybody's been there. Many struggle with the fact that they've had those dreams and aspirations, and it didn't happen. It didn't. I never got to be the world champion. That would have been fun. I never got to be the starting pitcher in the World Series. That would have been awesome. That was my dream as a kid. I wanted to do that so bad. Some people may say, well, I never got to do this, that, or the other. I never got to have kids, or I never went to the moon. Well, we don't know if anybody did, but that's another story. But all these different things. I didn't get to do this. I didn't get to all this different. We get hung up in that, and that list is endless. But I want you to think about these words. I want you to think about these words this morning from Jesus. You are. You are. That is not might be. That is not maybe it might happen. You are. If you take anything else out of this today, when you leave here today, I want you to remember that. I am the salt of the earth. Life is so oftentimes stifled, and we see that all the time. How many remember Archie Bunker? Stifle yourself. Life is stifled so many times, and in some cases, life is wasted. It really is. And again, I don't mean that to be critical, but sometimes it is wasted. Well, I'm not important. I can't change anything. I'm nobody special. I don't have a big title, or I don't have this degree, or I don't have this. Let me tell you something this morning. You are the salt of the earth. You have the ability to speak life into another person's world. Think about that this morning. We have the ability to speak life into another person's world, hope to the hopeless. We have the ability to bring flavor to one who sees nothing but things that are bland. We have the ability to pour color into those who only see black and white. You matter. You have purpose. Just don't keep it on the shelf. Don't let it go to waste. Don't let the world dictate your assignment. Your place is already set up. The day that you said yes to Jesus, the day that you said, you are mine, you are not only just at that moment, you are not only just known by him, but you are the salt that can allow others to see him too. That's the greatest influence in the world. It's the greatest thing in the world, the greatest gift in the world. You see, friends, worth is not found in becoming important. It's not. Worth is found in making something else better. That's such a great, not because I wrote it, but that's such a great analogy and understanding of the world today. And this is not what Jesus taught. This is about what Jesus did. And there's two different things. What difference does your life make? Never forget, you are. Amen? All right, let's have this great last song and think about what we've been doing here this morning as we enjoy what they're going to bring us in this final worship presentation as we think about what's been said. And again, not just to rehash it and go over and over, but I really want to plant that seed today that we think about. Because sometimes we struggle when we look in the mirror as to who we are. Maybe we haven't accomplished all the things that we set out to do. Lord knows I didn't. Not at all. But I'm working on a project right now that allows me to travel back through my time and writing and remembering all these amazing events, realizing what they were building. I didn't see it then. 35 years ago, 40 years ago, I didn't see it then at all, but I see it now. You know, sometimes we don't always see the answer because sometimes it's not available at that moment. When you first season that meal, it's not cooked yet. It needs to go in the oven for an hour or 2 hours. Or like I smoked a Boston butt on my smoker the other day, and that was 12 hours, you know, and I was ready to taste it. But the seasoning that was there from the very beginning, I wasn't able to have that because it was raw. It wasn't ready. Sometimes it's that way in life. Sometimes the resolution we're looking for, the answer we're looking for is not ready. But when it is, it'll be seasoned perfectly. And it'll be ready for the harvest. That's who we are. We're the salt of the earth. We pour into others. Let's take this time to listen to this song and close our time together as we remember who we are. Please stand if you feel, or sit and worship as you feel led.